Welcome to another episode of Alphawaves.
Welcome.
We're happy to have you here
Always.
with Cam and Darren. If you haven't already, follow us
Subscribe and all
and
of
like
that good stuff.
Yeah.
Just search Alphawaves.
Don't be a creep lurking. Like.
Message
or be
us.
a creep. Followers count. So
It does.
let me just get it. So today we're talking about Imposter Syndrome.
I've heard so much about this without ever really looking into it. So it'll be interesting to see.
That's an interesting. So what have you heard like off the bat?
I just heard a lot of people, am I thinking of Stockholm Syndrome? Ignore me.
Very
Cam.
different. But I want to know I want to know about those combos.
Nah, you know when you just hear things like, when vocab just randomly.
Yeah.
It was one of those ones.
Yeah,
But,
sure. But
yeah, go ahead.
well,
Imposter syndrome.
imposter syndrome is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
So imposter syndrome, which, I do think is a subconscious driving force, and I'll come into my story on that in a second. But officially, imposter syndrome is when you don't put down your successes to your own, ability, talent, work, competency, being competent. You actually feel like your successes come from luck or another source or someone's mistake or, accidental circumstances, that you were lucky and someone took a chance on you and things like that.
So it's like downplaying your achievements.
Yeah.
But is it based on the things you say or the way you act, or do you know what I mean? Like, how can I put it? You just said something about luck that made me think. Is it based on things like, I was lucky you know what I mean? Just is it based on things that you say, or?
Yeah, so like, it was just luck, or, oh my God, thank God, God's the only one who's done this, which is kind of true, but also God has gifted you with the talent to get this, So yeah, things like that.
So it's sorry to cut you. Is it, because I know you're in your
Got
your
my
bag.
notes, got my
in your
facts
bag.
and my figures.
But is it like a case of, is it only internal? So it's not like looking at somebody else and saying they've only got that because of XYZ. It's not about making excuses for why you don't. So, okay, cool.
I would say is a different. You know what? It's interesting you bring that up, because I feel like that is what I would consider as a projection. Like you thinking, oh, they only got this job because they're a man, or they're a woman, or they're pretty, or this, that, and the other. It's reflecting your own mindset of imposter syndrome, that there's this whole other reason why you've got the job rather than you deserving to be there.
Cool. Go forth.
So, fun fact, imposter syndrome is a behavioral pattern that two psychologists...
I'm so sorry.
What?
When you said fun fact, anyway, carry on.
This is
Ignore me.
it's a fact. It's a fact. So...
I was about to say imposter syndrome was founded in... Anyway, go on. Ignore me.
Listen, facts can be fun.
It's for the people.
Yes. So it was found in, I think, 1978.
Okay.
And initially around that time, they found that imposter syndrome was more prevalent in women. But as research grew, it's actually been found that imposter syndrome is more commonly found amongst people who belong to marginalized groups, so ethnic minorities, immigrants, people with disabilities. It's mostly found,
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why you think it's more prevalent? Is that a word?
Yeah, I think so. Imposter syndrome at work. Exhibit A.
Do you think that? What do you think is behind that? If you had to have your guess.
I don't know.
Your theses. It seems very fitting for this moment.
I do, for facts and I'm never bringing facts again. I can't even get through them.
I'm gonna stop mocking you in a minute, honestly, because it's important, your message. But yeah, what would you say?
I would say, I don't know. What would you say?
I think the women one is interesting. I think it's all about how society depicts these people. Like maybe at that time women felt oppressed, maybe.
Yeah, or were new in like, or relatively new in entering.
That's what I mean. Like, so if they felt oppressed and now they're out of that state of oppression and they're achieving certain things, where that's been on your mentality for so long, it might be hard to see anything other than that.
Yeah.
Like, even within myself, I don't believe it, but I'm just saying, for example, hypothetical. Don't do that.
It's because you scared that you laugh first. Don't blame me.
Like, growing up in the environments we grew up in, etc., you might achieve certain things and then downplay it like, oh, I've not really done nothing yet.
Yeah. Or not being... So with me, for example, I'm second generation. So my grandparents came here from India. My parents were born here, but,
Nice.
you know, they didn't go super far in education. So of, you know, my family, I'm the first one who went to uni and all that kind of stuff. And I feel like when you're the first one to do things, there's already a shaky ground because you're figuring it out as you go. And I think part of that does make you feel like an imposter, you know?
But like, see the word imposter itself, that's if we break that down, the word imposter is suggesting that you're playing a part. Right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Waiting to be found out.
But if it's a weird one, because if you have achieved these things, that means you've got the ability to do it. So why do you think we just subconsciously, when I say we, just people in general, subconsciously would downplay themselves if you're actively doing something?
I think it's hard when things are challenging and like you're having to kind of keep up appearances. I mean, even thinking about code switching, have you heard of that? Yeah, so things like code switching at work and stuff like that, you're already being performative in a way. And so I think that has an insidious effect on everything else, you know? And it's funny you mention it because there are a few ways that imposter syndrome does manifest. So one is by hard work. So working extra hard, taking no breaks, blah, 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 in order to hide your feared incompetence. Any comments?
I do, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow because I'm taking you deadly seriously now.
I could feel it. Yeah.
So, say now, you know this whole thing of like, especially for, like they say you have to work twice as hard as certain people to achieve certain things, right? Say that's your mentality from young, that's been instilled in you. And your ethos is exactly that. Like, I have to work hard. And by working hard, you've achieved certain things, right? And then you get to a point where you've achieved these things, but your mentality is, I've only got it because I've worked hard. And you continue to work hard. Does that blur the lines, you think? Or do you think no matter what, you working hard like that? Obviously, not everybody that works hard has imposter syndrome, right? But I'm saying somebody that does, how would you recognize that if that's like,
well, yeah, let's
in
break
you?
that down, because if that's what you have instilled in you, then you have to think of what is the actual message that's being instilled in you. Because what you're being told is, I have to work harder than everyone else. But what you're actually receiving is, I need to prove myself all the time. And I think sometimes we can misconstrue hard work with effort. You know, you don't need to burn out, you need to put in effort.
That's why they say work smarter, not harder.
Exactly. Like, you could get so much done in half an hour of focused work, not looking at your phone, paying attention, not having the doubts come up, like believing that you're capable, and all that stuff we'll come on to in a second. But you could do that rather than stressing out and struggling and really having your nose to the ground for the whole 7-8 hours. You know, sometimes, especially in sales, there's this whole thing that, like, if you're not hitting your targets, or if you're not doing what needs to be, if you're not hitting your target, then you shouldn't even be having lunch. Like, you need to be someone said that the other day at work. They were, you know, they have a large target to hit this month, and they were like, I haven't done enough. They're on the phone dialing and dialing and dialing. It's not their fault that no one's picked up. But because no one had picked up, they're like, I can't even take a break. Like, I can't go for lunch. I need to stay here until someone does. And I don't agree with that at all, you know, because is that going to get you more results? No. Are you doing that to prove that you're doing something? Yes. You know?
Do you think that relates as well? Yeah. You see, like when people don't want to take a day off sick and stuff like that because they're worried about.
Could never be me. I'm joking.
They're worried about like how they'll come across. But the reality is, if you're good at what you do, it shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, but you know, there's that thing where.
No, you know what it is? If you're sick, it doesn't matter. You need that day or even two, you know? That's what you need.
So does it like cross over into what people think of you?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's also subconsciously what you think of yourself. So this was very important very obvious with my experience in my new job. So in my new job, it's a bit challenging than the jobs that I've done previously. And with me, I've done what I do for a while now. So in my head, I'm like, I know what I'm doing, blah, 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 this. And when it's challenging, immediately, and this is why it's so important to listen to your thoughts and really understand them, because I'd be looking at my managers, I'd be really like reading their behaviors and thinking, oh my God, they don't like me. They're going to fire me. They're conducting interviews. They're literally planning my exit. And it was just extreme. And I had to sit down and look at that thought and think, why do I think I'm going to get fired? And when I dug a little bit deeper, what I realized is that because this job is quite challenging, I felt like they were going to fire me because I was going to be exposed for not knowing enough or not being smart enough or not being.
Did you know enough? Would you say?
No, I'm new. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, okay.
Like,
so why would you feel like that if you know you're new in the door?
Because it's like this internal pressure that you put on yourself to get there quicker, or, you know, oh my God, I should have already been here by now, which comes into these fun facts. So
I'll stop you before you jump into your fun facts.
Huh? Yeah, go on.
So it's like,
again, sure.
I mean, come on, this is what we're here for, people.
Go on.
Is doubt, like self-doubt, does that play a big part into it?
A big part. So excessive perfectionism, self-doubt, and also low self-worth creates that fear in you where you feel like everything you do is inappropriate. It's either too much or too little. Oh my God, I'm too open and socializing with everyone too much. I should be looking like I'm working harder. Or, oh my God, I'm not sociable enough. Like, I'm not a fun member of the team. They're not going to keep me on, you know? So those kinds of things play into it. So there's 6 ways that imposter syndrome manifests. So like I said, the first one, working extra hard to hide your incompetence. The second one is feeling like a fraud. So feeling like, you know, you've tricked someone into getting this job and you're going to be exposed. The third is subservient behaviors. So being really charming or perceptive, you know, letting people offload to you about their thoughts and their feelings, and being kind of that, you know, offering to do work that isn't even in your department to kind of like worm your way in, I guess. And then there's number 4, which I like to call stupidity exposure, which is
what does that
feeling, how I was feeling, which is feeling that you're going to be exposed for not being smart enough to do the job. So you do certain things to hide it, like, again, working extra hard, being really charming, blah, blah, blah. I mean, for me, I get moody, but I do work hard. So it manifests a little differently.
No comment.
Or devaluing yourself. So say, for instance, that you have your own business or something, charging low rates, offering to do work for free, being overly available, self-disrespecting behaviors like that. And the last one is undermining your experience. So feeling like you actually aren't qualified enough to do what you do, and having these impossibly high standards and feeling like you can't reach them, which is what I was doing. I was like, I should have already made a sale by now, without considering the fact that there is a lot to learn. And I've not known these things before, you know?
It's interesting because like, as you was just speaking, I was just thinking of different times in my life where some of those things may have crossed over. And you do kind of, you don't label it as anything. You just kind of have that thought. Well, me anyway. I have that thought and then I just carry on. But now you're putting a label to it is actually making me think, does everything need a label? Because it makes me actually sit down and think about it more. Because even...
I think so. Like, I think it's important to hear those voices in your head and to know who's speaking, and then to tap into the parental voice inside your head to speak to that childlike voice and say something different, you know? So for example, once I sat down and thought about it and realized that I'm feeling like I don't deserve to be here because I'm not smart enough, and they're all going to realize it because I'm just not getting the job straight away, which again, impossibly high standard. Once you recognize that and you can see it's your childlike voice that's speaking, you can start amending that. So literally what I started doing instead of like walking to work and just feeling how I feel, which is dreading coming into work, thinking about the issues, blah, 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 what I started doing was saying things to myself and saying, you know, you deserve to be here. You've earned your place here. Like, remember everything else that you've done. And I kid you not, it's had such an immediate effect on not only the way that I feel at work, but also my actual work. Like, I'm picking things up faster because instead of being horrible to myself all day, I'm feeling like everything's a conspiracy theory. I've just been able to do my work, you know, without worrying about how far I'm getting, and you increase your confidence.
Can other people have influence on that? Like, can the things that other people say have influence on any of those key points that you made, do you think?
As in a positive influence?
No, negative.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like, where do these feelings of low self-worth and, you know, self-doubt come from? Like, those voices weren't yours to begin with. No child off the bat tells himself they're not good enough. Like, someone has said something to you, you know? Just like your example earlier of you need to work twice as hard. Why do I need to work twice as hard? Why do I have something to prove? And then those thoughts are all driving things.
Builds up. Because I remember, like, let me just hit one of those points. I was charging something for some of my work anyway. I was charging something, I remember somebody was like to me, that's expensive, and this is how my mentality's changed.
Buyers are liars. That's what I'll say.
No, but the thing is, they said that's expensive, like, for etc. etc. And I can't lie, the first time I did hit, the first time I heard it, you're right, you know, I was like, who do I, like, at that time, I was like, why am I charging that? Who do I think I am to charge those things, right? But then the second time I heard it, by the time the second time came around that I heard it, I was more of a case of, but this is my worth. Like, you're just not my market. That's how my mentality changed on that one.
Exactly.
But if I did stay in that mentality, that would have been because of what somebody else said to me. And I never really thought that. But is it just because of what someone else said? Maybe I had that doubt of like...
Yeah, because you're, you know, the second time around someone said that, you thought something different. But the first time around, you did think like, you know... And
honestly as well, by the time the second time came around, I was a lot more confident in what I was selling because it was at the... It's been improved by that time around. Whereas the first time it was still early out of the gate. So you're right, I weren't 100% certain about what I was trying to sell. Whereas by the time it came to the second time around, I've got 100% confidence in what it is and the value of it.
Yeah.
So I guess it does stem from inside. Even like, there was one time, I must have tried to do a delivery job for a bit. I was about to say something. It might have been disrespectful to people. It's not like the most challenging job, like mentally, innit? It's not the most challenging.
Yeah.
So how I thought about it is actually wild because it's not. I like mentally challenging stuff, right? So I'm doing the job anyway. First day. It got to like bear in mind I started at like 6, 7 in the morning. Yeah, it got to like 8 p.m. and I'm still outside. Yeah, and I remember phoning someone and being like, I'm just no good. Like, I just can't do this. I'm no good for this job. This isn't for me, kind of thing, innit? And like, I'm good at sleeping and stuff. But then the next morning I woke up and I was just like, that was childish of me, like to throw my toys out the pram like that. Like, but it was because of everything that I was. Now I'm thinking back to it. It's just because of everything that I was going through at that time. I within myself didn't feel like
secure.
Yeah, I almost felt like this is. How could that? This sounds so rude, but how could like that be above me? If that makes sense. That sounds disrespectful, right?
No, I know what you
but
mean.
You know
like, how
mean?
could I not do this? But here I am, not able to do this.
Yeah, like that's how it felt. That's how it felt. Since then, I don't think I've ever felt like that in my life.
Yeah.
But so, do you think you can change?
You
Obviously,
absolutely
you can change.
You can, and I'm so glad you brought that up because it's made me think about where I'm at in my life at that time. And when I started this new job, there were so many things that were, you know, kind of affecting my confidence in different ways, you know. So having all of that in the background and then starting a new job, which is a little bit more challenging than other things that I've done, it definitely is a cocktail for in a world disaster, you know, and that happens. But that brings me back to my certain point. Like, that's why it's so important to, like, maybe not necessarily, label things, because instead of having those thoughts, thinking about them, dealing with them and thinking it's you, because also bear in mind, when you have those thoughts, it doesn't just stop there. You also get angry at yourself, like, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I even thinking these things? Why am I not getting it? When you put it down to something and you're like, oh, this is a normal way to feel, you know, I'm not the only one feeling this way. You have to like know yourself, you know, you have to know what's going on, what's driving these things, so you can, one, stop blaming yourself, and two, make yourself feel more secure. Yeah. You have to challenge these thoughts.
I mean, I get it.
And challenging them doesn't necessarily always mean, okay, where is this coming from? Blah, blah, blah. Like, what makes this true? Like,
but don't you think it's difficult to like recognize it if you are being like, because imposter syndrome is the fact of you being successful at something, right? But you feel like you're not the person, if that makes sense. Is that right? Based on your...
What do you mean?
Like, imposter syndrome, as a definition, is what?
That despite your successes, you believe that they happened not because of your hard work, your talent and your skills, but your successes have come about from, you know, pure luck or someone else making a mistake and dropping the ball and choosing you, or, you know, an accidental circumstance.
Right. So you're in that position now where you are successful and you feel that way. How do you think somebody can change that mentality? Do they have to go through something, or do you think it can just be a learning process?
I think it's a learning process. I think when you're starting something new that you haven't done before, that can happen, because there's definitely been times I've walked into jobs and been like, this is so easy, I'm so good at what I do, blah, 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 and go the other way and can be kind of arrogant, you know? So then when you have that and something comes along that you're not able to grasp straight away, then it's hard. And you know what, actually, I think that comes down to also having a blurry line with talent. Like, sometimes when you're good at something and you don't think too hard about it, you forget that it is a skill, you know? Because one thing I was thinking during that time at work was like, oh my God, it's gone. Like, whatever gift I had, it's no longer here. And that's not true, you know? It's just a skill. It's a technique. Like,
so you see, like, just to go back a little bit, you see, with your point of not grasping something straight away, like you've been hired for a job, but you're not grasping it straight away. Is the success in that scenario the fact that you have been hired? That should be enough to let you know that you are good enough to do this job. But the fact that you've been hired and you're not grasping it anyway, that's when you start to doubt yourself.
Yeah.
You start to feel that imposter syndrome?
Oh, definitely. Like and that's what I mean. You have to pause and listen to your thoughts, because then you can actually listen to them and think, yeah, that's a bit crazy. Because for real, like there was moments where I was thinking, oh my God, like I'm not living up to who they thought I was in the interview. I didn't lie about any of my experiences in the interview. You know, I didn't embellish anything. I used all my real experiences. I did all the things I said I did, but I still felt like, oh my God, like they've hired this person and now I'm totally different. Like they're not seeing what I'm seeing. And then when I actually stopped and thought about all the highlights that have happened at work, like measuring progress rather than the ultimate goal, there were so many highlights to prove that I am capable, I am deserving, I can be here, you know. And if it's not for me, that will be my choice.
That makes sense. The reason I'm just saying it, I'm just trying to drive home the point that there's a difference between that and you feeling that you could do better and that you want to be better, right? There's a big difference between that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Talk to me about that difference.
So like, for instance, I'll give another example, because say if you're doing something creatively and somebody's asked you, so let's say music, let's just throw an obvious example. Music, somebody's asked to collaborate with you, right? And you've gone and done that collaboration and you leave feeling, was that good enough? Or I could have done better, etc. And the other person is telling you that it's perfect. They like it, etc., etc. But you have that doubt within yourself. Would that classify as imposter syndrome?
That's imposter syndrome too. Let me tell you.
I promise you, this isn't pre-planned.
It's not. Well, that was perfect.
Synergy.
So there's different types of imposter syndrome people. So one of them is experts. So people who need to know it all. They need to, tick. So for instance, if you're applying for a job, they won't apply for it unless they tick every single criteria and stuff like that. And then there's the perfectionists. So I can't read what I wrote, but they're perfectionists. So they're people who want to get everything done absolutely perfectly in order for that to prove that they've done what they needed to do. But again, that comes into what we spoke about earlier of setting impossibly high standards, not meeting them. And that's, I feel, when self-fulfilling prophecy comes into place, because then now you're because you've set these high standards, you haven't met them, you are affirming to yourself like, yeah, I'm not good enough for this thing. And that's just not true, you know?
So how much of an influence do you think somebody can have on that if they're giving you positive words? We said the negative before. If somebody's driving home positive words to you, do you think that can change anything, or do you think that can just almost add to your belief that you don't, say if someone keeps praising you, but you don't see it within yourself or your talent or whatever, that praise won't necessarily change your mind, will it?
I'll be honest, with me, it didn't. Like there would be people in everyone who I work with is great. Like they've been so encouraging and like helpful and everything. And they'll say like, oh, that was a really good call, or, you're doing things good, or blah, blah, blah. And it for me anyway, it just doesn't work. Like if I'm having those thoughts and feelings, then that's what I will hang on to, because your voice is the loudest voice at the end of the day, in my opinion, So when people were saying those things, it didn't matter. Like the very next day, I'd look for small changes in their behavior and like, oh my God, their opinion's changed, or oh my God, that person has spoken to them and changed their opinion of me. Everything just turns into a paranoid conspiracy. Yeah. But, to move it in an uplifting direction, truly affirming those things to myself every day in the morning. And you know what? It is interesting, because when I got this job, I really did believe that it came from God, and I still do believe that. But I didn't account any of my talent to it. So in the morning towards work, I'd pray and be like, okay, I pray that today's going to be an easy day. Today's going to be this. Today's going to be that. And prayer is powerful, but you also need to put in some effort too, you know? And if your thoughts aren't, you know, God aligned, I guess, then that just won't make a difference. And then walking into work saying different things like, you deserve this, you belong here, you are capable. This is just new to you. Everyone else has been there for 2 years minimum. So why are you comparing yourself, you know? Those things have made a massive difference.
Interesting.
Another thing that's made a huge difference for me is at the end of the day, writing down all the progress that I've made. You know, celebrating your wins is a huge way to battle imposter syndrome, because you come home and you will ruminate and think about all the things that you didn't do or all the benchmarks that you haven't hit yet, and you'll stress yourself out. And then when you come home and remind yourself like, no, I did this, I did that, that was really good, I didn't do that yesterday and I did it today, you know, it starts to make a difference.
So it's pretty much like an internal process. Yeah,
it is an internal process. But, you know, having good friends around you really helps to talk things through with. Journaling, or even not journaling, but thinking through the thoughts yourself is so powerful, because you need to have that conversation with yourself. You need to understand this voice that's speaking and call in a different voice.
But you know why? The reason I go back to it, actually, let me finish this point first. Do you think that, right, can I just confuse my 2 points? I'll come back to that. Basically, you see, like, if you, I said it previously, but if you're like, that's what I was going to say, sorry. Do you think seeing, if you're going into a place and seeing somebody that looks like you doing what you do to the same level as you, that can help benefit as well? Whereas if you're just by yourself, I'm just taking your work example, like if you walked into that workplace and you saw someone that looks like you, that shares your behaviors, do you think that would then reduce your level of, I'm not good enough to do this? Or do you still think it's still that me thing?
That is interesting, because there is someone at my work who is, you know, Indian, female, really great at the job, a couple years older than me, been there since the place started. And they're not here right now. They're working remotely from another country. I don't know, you know, because I feel like that intimidated me more, in a sense.
Really?
Yeah, it did, because I was like, oh my God, I'm not like her. And then also thinking, do they want me to be like her? I can't be like her. And then, it kind of like, I don't know, it's weird. That's so hard to answer, because obviously she's not here right now, and I'm trying to remember how it was when she was. And when she was here, part of it was so motivating, because you're seeing someone who has the things you want and they look like you. So these things look more real to you. And it was a motivator, like, oh my God, I could be that way. But then at the same time, it's also intimidating, because it highlights so much of how I'm not measuring up to that at the same time, you know? So,
but do you know why it's tricky? Because somebody with imposter syndrome doesn't necessarily mean somebody that's not motivated or somebody that's not achieving, because you're achieving, but you just don't feel that you deserve it, right? So,
or that you didn't fully earn it.
Yeah, you didn't. Yeah, there's something that's happened for your benefit or whatever, however you put it. But how can somebody from the outside, because from the outside looking in, you just look like a successful person. It's all internal, right? So how can anybody from the outside kind of see that in someone? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. I don't think you can. I mean, actually,
because I was going to say, is there anybody that you can look at in the public eye that you see successful? Obviously, I don't expect names off the top of your head, but have you ever looked at someone and thought, or heard somebody speak and be like, I think you may have imposter syndrome? The reason I say that is because how can you bring yourself out of something if you're not aware it's there? And sometimes it's not you that recognizes it, it's someone that recognizes it in you, in things in life.
Well, that's why you need to talk to people around you, for one. And two, that's why you need to actually listen to your thoughts and not just suffer with them, which is something I really have been doing. You know, you have to do that. I think it's so weird because it is so internal. It can be so subconscious, but I truly believe that anything subconscious can be made conscious just by paying attention to it. It really is that easy. All the steps after that are not as easy, but that step is easy.
You think so?
I think so. Like
just by listening to yourself, basically.
Because you don't even know what you're thinking sometimes. You know, sometimes you'll have a 30-second trip and you'll have so many thoughts and your body's just reacting. And then you're like, okay, just shake it off. But you haven't really shaken it off. So you've got to hear it. Like when you actually stop and hear the thought and you hear yourself say, I can't do this, you suddenly question how true that is. Like, wait, why can't I do this? Yes, I can do that, you know? So, yeah, I mean, also it comes down to regulating yourself. It can be a very intense situation sometimes. So you need to like run to the bathroom, take some deep breaths and do it there, you know? Like it comes down to that stuff to you. But yeah, I think when you start noticing things, sometimes the hard thing about noticing things in yourself, for me anyway, can be the fear of what it means about you. It's so much easier to walk around work and fake it till, or whatever, and fake it till you make it and project onto other people and be that super boisterous person in the room to hide all these things. Because sometimes it is hard to admit to yourself that you don't have as great of a self-worth as you wish you did, or you don't have as much confidence as you wish you did.
That's the thing with confidence though, well, especially linked to this, is like it can affect confident people as well, because you can be confident to a point, right?
Yeah.
And
everyone has doubts. Like there's varying degrees of imposter syndrome. It doesn't have to be as intense as mine has been. You know, it can vary, but paying attention to yourself and nurturing yourself, which, you know, we just have to do. Like you can call it snowflakey or too soft or whatever, but I'd rather nurture myself than torture myself. So
makes sense.
Know, yeah.
Do you think there's many settings that you can feel imposter syndrome outside of like work and I don't know?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you experienced it outside of that?
I can't think off the top of my head, but I feel like I have, you know. It depends on which areas in your life you don't feel as secure in, I guess.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting. What have you got any? Huh?
So what about you?
I don't know, you know. I actually don't know. I'm just thinking about it now. Because it's crazy. Like, yeah, it's crazy. I don't know because obviously, like working and like your own personal goals, etc. Whatever you do in life, there's gonna be that element of I wouldn't say imposter syndrome, but there's gonna be that element of, am I good enough to do what I do at some point?
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, actually, I think with writing and creativity, I feel it sometimes there.
Yeah.
Especially not being a professional writer or dedicated to the scene for so many years and active in that way. Sometimes I do feel like, oh, do I belong here? Like, do I have a right to be here? Kind of thing. Yeah. Sometimes them.
No, I don't think I have that in anything that I do creatively. There's been things that's like reaffirmed it in a lot of my ventures. Like I said, I know that you, with me, I'm very honest with myself as well. I know when something deserves what it's getting.
Recognition,
yeah. So I think I'm quite good at that now. Maybe at one stage in my life I weren't as great with it, but definitely now.
But you've been in it for so long, and that's why I'm so glad you brought it up, because I truly believe also, and a friend said this to me, that the more you practice something, the more natural it becomes to you and the more confident and secure you feel about it.
That's true. It's true, because when I've like tried to venture off into other things, there is that element of, is what I'm producing good enough? But when it's my creative work, I already feel like I'd never have those thoughts.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's so good.
that's interesting.
Yeah, and you've been like so connected to your creative side for as long as I've known you, you know, so that is good.
But it does, I have had those moments where like I've taken breaks from it, to pursue other things, or life gets in the way, etc. And when I've come back to it, I have doubted myself sometimes, like, am I even still?
You feel like something's been taken from you, but that's not true. It's just practice.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. But it's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you have any more facts or anything before we round up?
Well, a couple of things I want to share is the mistakes that I made with imposter syndrome, with this job in particular, because it's the most recent, like the most obvious example of everything. But a few things that I did that, again, when you're unaware and subconsciously thinking, it drives so many actions that just did not need to be there. So things like a couple mistakes I'd say that I'd made is one, expressing all this stress to my managers, which sounds like a weird thing to say, but I feel like when you're putting so much pressure on yourself and then expressing that too, it just doesn't need to be done, you know, because especially when you're new as well, maybe this isn't a great way of thinking because everyone's like transparency. But I believe that when you first start a new job, it is important to keep some cards close to your chest, you know, and try to do that a little bit. So that's one mistake that I feel like I made. Another was constantly showing how much work I've done. Like, oh my God, look, this is what I've done today, and continual updates, because I feel like that creates a weird dynamic, first of all, where you're constantly having to show, like you're almost micromanaging yourself.
Seeking validation for what you've done.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes into what we spoke about, like doing all this extra hard work to prove that you're working. And yeah, those are some things that you just don't have to do. Like you actually don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
One thing I did that I'm really glad I've done is I've taken my full hour lunch break every day, and everyone should do that. Why would you not?
It only sounds that just from the outside, as an outsider, that just makes sense to me. I don't know why you wouldn't. But,
Exactly. Well, I wish more people would. You need it. Like you need it, especially if your job is stressful and targeted and you're there actually working hard. You gotta give yourself that.
100%. 100%. I think those are good lessons learned.
That was so dramatic.
What?
100%.
No,
I love it. That's exactly how I feel. But
crazy.
yeah.
No, I think those are good lessons learned though.
Yeah.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Oh, another mistake was literally reading into things so much more than I needed to. Like dissecting everyone's actions, because I'm so afraid, like, oh my God, they're going to fire me, you know? Also, on that note as well, when you do have a fear like that, one thing that helped me, that was advised to me, was to ask yourself, like, okay, if they do fire you, what's going to happen? You know, are you never going to find another job again? Another opportunity? You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, any last comments before our words of advice?
No, not really. It's
No more interruptions?
No. I think you should do it more often. A common theme. Cam with the notes.
Cam with the notes. And my notebook says notes, so
just in case you didn't know what it was for.
Oh. Need to make sure I've got my notes. All right, what's your words of advice? Yeah.
Words of advice. Words of advice. This is interesting because today's like the first time that I've really dealt with the phrase imposter syndrome. But my word of advice would just be value yourself. Like, bottom line, if you're in a position in life, 9 times out of 10 it's not just luck. Like,
It's not luck.
There's going to be something that you've done to contribute to that. So
luck is when opportunity meets preparation. Yes, exactly.
No more messing up phrases. I like it.
It's done. Imposter syndrome is done. So it is. But yeah, my word of advice would be what I've been saying this whole time. Hear your thoughts. Don't just think, let your thoughts run amok, listen to them. And then you know what you actually need to tell yourself, Practice makes perfect.
Makes sense.
Knowledge is what creates what you need to create.
You was on a good run, but you just kind of told us.
I should have just left it at knowledge.
Yeah, I don't know where it's going, but hey.
But yes, those are my words, and we are done.
It is what it is.
You're crushing my confidence, Darren. It's you.
I'm bad.
You're the syndrome to my imposter.
I'm bad for people. Anyway, thank you for joining us for another episode.
Yes.
And until next time.
Until then. Thank you.
Hand signs if you didn't see that.
And